Let's open our Bibles to Genesis. We're looking at the specifications from the beginning. We're looking at the original document of how God planned for fathers, husbands, families, life, back to the original, back to His Word, accounting exactly what it was He designed when He designed a father. And that's really where I want you to start with me in Genesis 2. Remember, there are two creation accounts. They're exactly the same, except they're from two different perspectives. The first chapter is what we would call a cosmological view. It's God looking as far as creation from the perspective of the entire universe. The second creation account would be what we would call anthropological, from man's perspective, because it highlights the creation of man, and especially what we're going to look at, God's design right from the beginning. And as I just went back and went through that this week, I was amazed how this exactly parallels what we've been studying in Titus 2. Because you'll see from the beginning, before the fall, before sin, before the warping of the family and of marriage and of personal lives by sin that we come to when Paul's writing to Titus, before all that, it was not, the first thing that wasn't good in the universe was, it wasn't good for man to be alone. He needed a best friend, a helpmeet suitable for him. Isn't that amazing? Before there was any sin, any evil, any problem, any conflict, any rivalry, anything, the first thing that God described that wasn't good in the creation was it wasn't good for Adam to be alone. And what a wonderful thought. As we turn to Genesis 2 and we see God's original plan for husbands and thus for fathers, God's original plan and design was for husbands and wives before the fall, before all that sin caused. In creation, this is what we're going to see, starting, we'll look from 18 down to 25. God said men were incomplete without their woman, without the woman made for them. And that is not a defect, that's a design plan of God. And the more we understand that, the more we understand how wonderful it is, what we're seeing in Titus, that the grace-energized wives become best friends with their husbands. Not just to have that general biblical spirit-prompted agape love, but to have that deep, close, intimate, phileo, emotional friendship love. Because, as we'll see in our text, that men are incomplete without the woman that God made for them. When Paul instructed the wives in the island of Crete through Titus to be instructed by the grace-energized older women in the faith, he told them that they needed to train the younger women how to love their husbands. All that training was as a reflection back on the original plan. You see, the further away from the original plan we get, and the further away from the creation event, and the further away from the Scriptures society gets, the more there is a breakdown of an understanding of what marriage is even all about, and what the husband and wife relationships are. Our study in Titus is just a reminder that what Christ's church said husbands were to be loved by these grace-energized wives, was just a following of God's plan from the beginning. God made the first woman, Eve, to become Adam's close and cherished companion, his friend, his completer. That was God's original intent. And that's what we're going to repeat, review, and seek to have present. Because do you remember when Paul wanted the island of Crete, as pagan as it was, to be impacted, the first course that he said for the deploying those powerful half of the church that are women, he said, the first thing I want you to be doing is to be lovers of your husbands. You want to break through the Cretan culture, the Roman culture, you want to break through the sin-warped society, let them see marriage divine style, the way it was intended to be, the way it was designed to be, the way it should be when prompted and energized by obedience to God and by the power of His Spirit and His grace working within us. Well, Father's Day is a grand opportunity to go back to see God's design. And starting in Genesis 2:18, and I know I'm skipping over chapter 1 and the first 18 verses, so what we've seen before that is the great and marvelous creation of God. And God has created all the universe, and in 6 successive days, and by the way, I believe that there's 6 literal 24-hour days, not because of Genesis 1, but because of Exodus 20. You know, people can get all in the smoke in Genesis 1 and 2 and say age, days, and blah, 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 blah. But when Moses was talking to working people in Sinai, Mount Sinai, to 3 million people, he spoke very clearly. He says, God wrote with his own finger the creation account, and it says this. This is how you understand Genesis 1 and 2. For as you work for 6 days and rest the seventh, so God created the earth in 6 days and rested the seventh. And what did 3 million ordinary working class people understand that to be? God created the whole universe in 6 24-hour days, rested the seventh 24-hour day, as you work 6 24-hour days, or at least a third of them or more, and rest the seventh. And so, of course, creationism is just part of this whole study of Adam and Eve. I mean, the first man, the first woman, designed by God. But God had made the entire universe. He crowned it with his last creation, which was in his image, called a man. Then look at verse 18. And the Lord God said, it is not good. Oh. Have you ever noticed the kind of the cadence of the creation account? Da-da, 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 and God saw it was good. Da-da, 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 and God saw it was good. And there's this, God saw it was good. And now we come to verse 18, and God said it's not good. God finds the first thing in the entire universe that was not good, and it's right here in the 18th verse. God states that man should not be alone. It's not good. So God crowns the creation of man with the creation of woman. I hope you always realize that Adam was the crown of the creative work of God, and then God says it's not good to end here. I need to add one more crown to my creative work, and to make woman so man would not be alone.